Show we one more we go to school. That was common refrain then. I got into Loyola College eventually, the great Loyola College, the best in every way. Although someone once remarked that it's only God knows how these trying times become the good old days. Because then, our parents regaled us with stories of the good old days too. And some of those stories we found unbelievable. Now, I will understand if our children today also find some of our good old days stories incredibly unbelievable. For me, the good old days were exciting and adventurous, not the TV kind or the movies kind or the PlayStation kind, but the kind that was real, practical, and blissful. Now, must we continue with this sad trend of always referring to our past as a nation as good when we can positively project into a greater future for us and the upcoming generation? Can we stem the tide and change the narrative? Yes, we can. We can begin to borrow lessons from the past and take conscious steps that will not only guarantee us a brighter future, but will ensure we become a greater nation as well. Our children deserve a brighter and better tomorrow, not the good old days. Let us make the difference now for the sake of our children tomorrow. I therefore join Sir Shemori Badejo in this collective drive towards a greater tomorrow. Thank you.
The governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi, former national chairman of the party, Adams Oshomole, and others declare presidential ambitions, bringing the number to about 27, 17 of whom have picked 100 million naira form. And Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act as amended does not exist, says Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio. Well, this is Plus Politics. I am Mary Anna Cohn. The race for the presidential tickets of the ruling All Progressive Congress APC continues as Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi, the Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, former national chairman of the party, Adams Oshomole, Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and Jigawa State Governor Muhammad Badru Abubakar have individually declared their intent to be the standard bearer of the party for the 2023 general elections. Altogether, over 15 individuals have declared their intentions to run and have picked up the required forms. Yet, the party has now extended its deadline for the sales of nomination and expression of interest forms. The ruling party has made about 1.23 billion naira from the sale of expression of interest and nomination forms to 17 presidential aspirants. Well, joining us to break this down and more is Bola Oba and Biodu Shomi, who both are political analysts. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you.
Very much for the opportunity.
Great. I'm going to start with you, Bola. It's very interesting when we see these many aspirants, many people declaring their intentions to run, and who knows, many more might just, in the coming days continue to throw their hats into the ring. But But then let's start by looking at the quality of the people who have so far declared their interest.
Is that supposed to be a question?
Yes, I'm asking, what do you think about the people who have joined the presidential aspiration so far? What do you think of the quality of these men, including the woman who has also joined?
So pedestrian speaks to the fact that we are in a silly season. We are in a silly season of politics, and to be honest with you, it shows more so to me that the incumbent must have dumped down the quality of the hallowed office so much that every riffraff believes he or she, in so much as he or she could garner the funds, can go for it. Very pedestrian.
When you say every riffraff, I'm looking at the people who have so far joined that race in the APC, by the way. Can you really qualify them with that term? I mean, we've had former Senate presidents, we've had former governors, we've also seen former party leaders. Do they really qualify as riffraffs, or Tom, Dicks and Harry?
Former party leader who was decapitated in a manner bordering on a comical production. You forgot now he was decapitated from the seat. Or former Senate leader in another party, I guess you're not talking about the ruling party. And the Senate leader, whilst he was still on the hallowed seat of the Senate leader, even lost his state. So if that does not speak to something to you, for you, it does for me.
Interesting. Let me come to you, Biodusomi. Let's look at the quality again, like I asked, of the people who have thrown their hat into the ring so far. I mean, Walaba has said that he feels that it's a come one, come all affair for the APC. Many have said that this is some form of money-making scheme for the ruling party, and this might empower them, when it's time for the main race in itself. But what are your thoughts?
Well, there are different ways you can move this issue. In the first instance, is the party deliberately encouraging so many aspirants to come out with a view to make some money, rake in money. That's one way. The other way is it about another game plan? When it comes to the quality of the candidates, it depends on what you mean, what our own understanding of governance. Many of them are well experienced in art of governing Nigeria, and I would call it like that, in the sense that they've been holding political offices, and some are still holding offices till now. And we have so many of them interested in contesting for the presidency. One thing which I found strange is that we've never had the lodge of presidential candidates in our political history. Even prior to 1999, we've never had it. So therefore, we need to understand exactly what is really going on. Is it about the political party wanting to make money, or about something else? In my view, I think it's about something else. I don't think it's about making money, because at the end of the day, whatever money they are making, one or two people within that setup, amongst those who are applying, can pay, donate that amount of money. So I don't think it's about that. I think it's about a different game plan. You need to go look at the issue, from an historical perspective. Look at the situation when the 17 southern governors declared that the presidency must come to the south. And then look at the reaction of the northern governors with the eminence. And then we find a situation where APC as a political party decided that the chief of the party should be zoned, to the north, knowing that once a northerner occupies that post, then there is no way a northerner will be the presidential candidate. Now, when it comes to the south, so many people have been encouraged to come out, and also people, from the north have been encouraged to come out. What I see happening is a situation where the president is determined, to have a consensus candidate. If you have so many candidates out who are holding, their own territory, it will be difficult for anyone, to have 50% of the votes in a particular zone. Because if the constitution has actually broken it all down to zones, and they've increased the local government from, the delegates from local government from 3 to 5. So therefore, it would be impossible for any particular aspirant to win the whole zone. So this will compel negotiations, and that is when the presidency will come in, the leadership of the party will come in, and then choose whoever they want as the consensus candidate, and then they will be able to get the necessary backing for that person. But we should not forget what the Electoral Act says. If one candidate disagrees, then the consensus option they're working on may not work. So it depends on what they're trying to do, but what I see is exactly what I put. I don't see it as a money-making venture. I see it as part of the game plan on choosing the next presidential candidate from the APC who may be compliant, to the interests of the party.
Okay, let me come back to you, Mr. Oba. Shomi is saying that this might be a tactic of sorts to finally get all the aspirants to, come to a consensus. But do you see some confusion erupting as a result of this game plan if it does not necessarily work? Being that we're seeing more and more people emerge from the South and less people from other regions. Like he has said, they have zoned the offices to the north, of course. Now, the South, obviously, are the ones who are at play. But do you see a smooth sail in this particular game plan? Or are there other things that, other permutations that you see in the future?
I want to congratulate Shomi for the overstretch of his public intellectualism in trying to rationalize the madness that is happening in the APC now. The best explanation for me is money laundering. The party needs money. They go out to encourage, every character who they believe could be used to articulate the money laundering exercise. And basically, it's just a festival of plutocracy. Permutation, consensus. There is no consensus mechanism in the APC Presidential Convention Constitution. In the Constitution of APC, there is no consensus for their Presidential Convention. It has to be
this is how President Buhari emerged in the first instance. So, are you saying that the party was jettison that?
No, factually wrong, madam. Go check your facts.
But it was some form of a consensus. There was an agreement of sorts for President Buhari to be the flag bearer of the party.
You are historically and factually wrong. Go and check your facts. In 2014, at Teslim Balogun, there was a contestation. In 2018, there was direct, although opponents did not come out, but there was direct primaries across Nigeria, so-called direct primaries. And I'm telling you authoritatively now, you go research it or get your research persons to do it for you. There is no consensus instrument in how the APC chooses its presidential candidate. It must be either direct or indirect primaries. And once it is not in the Constitution, I wonder how that could be articulated.
I'd also like to correct you that there is consensus within the APC's constitution. You can go check it.
There is consensus in the General Convention. Listen carefully. There is consensus in the General Convention. But in the Presidential Election Convention, there is no consensus. The two are different, my sister. Go check it. The two are different.
So you're saying that there will not be any consensus at the end of the day. So are you envisaging that there will be a confusion, in picking who becomes the flag bearer at the end of the day? We will all fall back to direct primaries, will we?
My sister, you don't necessarily have to have a confusion. There are two outstanding mechanisms. They have ruled out one. They said they are not using direct primaries, but they also have indirect primaries. Indirect primaries is like electoral college mechanism where delegates elected from their wards to their local governments to their states, under, we know how this thing works in Nigeria, under the control of the governor, and in states without governor, under the control of somebody with a deep pulse, would go to a convention center, a presidential convention center, not general convention center, go to a convention center to cast their votes for the person, the aspirant of their choice.
Okay.
And we know that that is the bazaar. The issue from when Moshood Abiola articulated the use of money at the Just Convention of the SDP in 1992. When you hear presidential conventions of parties, delegates are going for bazaars and they want to come on with money.
Okay, but back to you, Shomi. It's interesting, the position of Bolaho, but he's saying that this is going to boil down to indirect primaries. Now, we know that the congresses are coming up in a bit. They're getting ready for that. But then they have also pushed back the dates for the sale of forms. Even though INEC has come out to say, well, the dates for the primaries are unshakable, it's sacrosanct, they're not going to move it. What do you think the congresses are going to, what shape and form do you think it will take?
Yes, there will be congress. We should understand one thing. When we talk about consensus, the fact of the matter is the Electoral Act, as amended, allowed for 3 methods of choosing candidates. 1, direct primaries. 2, indirect primaries. The third one is consensus. This was debated, in the whole country. The president actually insisted on having that consensus, inserted before the Electoral Act was actually signed off. So therefore, any party, including the APC, that chooses to adopt the consensus option will not be violating the Electoral Act. And I think that's the most important point in this matter, because the party constitution is not superior to the Electoral Act or the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is a statement of fact. Now, back to your question. They will have Congress. We know there will be Australia. We know that so many candidates all out there. But why are they all coming out? You begin to ask yourself, even those who are sure that their tentacles will not extend beyond their states are also coming out. The reason is there's a game platform. While the APC is harvesting money through that, including PDP, all the parties are harvesting money for me, the major parties. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see this just about making. I see this as part of the process that will lead to the Congress, whereby a form of negotiations will take place. I don't think that would succeed, in my view. I don't see all the candidates agreeing on one person, but they are all out to represent different interests. And which is very clear to me. We cannot remove, the influence of the presidency in what you are beginning to see, because the cabal behind it all in the presidency, also have their own pickets amongst all these candidates. So obviously, this is to enable discussions. There is anxiety about what would happen after Buhari. Will there be restructuring? Anxiety about the fate of the country and all that. And the powers that be would only swing their support towards their own interests. I think there are a lot of other issues which are playing on behind this, the fray. But in order to have a major influence, you really need to have so many people in the race and people who you can count on their votes, in order to influence whoever the president wants as they can. I don't see the whoever that would emerge would be a true reflection of what all the delegates want. Bolava is right on one point, that the fact that money would exchange hands, that's the fact. Delegates will get some form of monetary stomach infrastructure from it. That's a fact. But at the end of the day, all the candidates are comfortable enough, to do that. But I don't see that as a major issue. I think the major issue is actually a political agenda which they're trying to foster. It's not about financial returns or reward or money going into APC pocket.
Quickly, before I go back to Bolaba, I want to ask a question about the presidential aspirants meeting that was supposed to take place, the Southern presidential aspirants meeting that was supposed to take place, that was all of a sudden cancelled. There are people who had said that, look, this meeting would have, given the Southwest some form of a vantage point of sorts. Looking again at all of the people who have come out from the Southwest, I mean, let's also not forget that we've also had some people from the South, like the Minister for Transportation. We've also had the Minister for Niger Delta. We may not have so many people from the South, but then the Southwest meeting cancelled abruptly. In looking at all of these Southwesterners, and now let's look at votes. Let's look at how the handshake across, from here to other regions. How powerful, or which candidates do we think that if that meeting were to hold, would be able to, spread its tentacles right across the country to be able to win that seat for the APC?
Is that for me? Or
yes, it's for you.
Oh, yeah. When you look at the handshake plan across the Southwest, what's the essence? The essence is to prune down candidates in a way that it will be manageable and Southwest will be able to present, a common. And I think it's exactly the same thing that the South or Southeast intended to do. Now the one for Southwest has been cancelled due to distrust, and questions are being raised by some of those who speak for Mr. Vice President, while others welcome. In the Southwest, the agenda is very clear. The candidates are very clear. I think nobody can deny the fact that Tinubu is a major factor in the Southwest and is in the race. So we also have the Vice President, who also is a sitting Vice President. And when it comes to those people with tentacles, across the whole country, I think Tinubu probably, given the length of time he's been on the scene and given his role in the past, and being the national leader of the APC, I think he's in a very good position. But at the same time, a sitting vice president cannot be dismissed as not having influence across the country. I think he does have influence, across the country. So I can see both of them as probably leading candidates in the South.
Same question for you, Mr. Oba. What do you think was at the...
Before I go to that question, let me put this emphatically. The Electoral Act as amended, or the Electoral Act, the amended Electoral Act 2022, allows consensus as one of the instrumentalities of choosing party leaders and choosing candidates of parties. But having said that, the Electoral Act does not overrule the constitution of the parties. If the constitution of the parties, as in the case of the APC, clearly defines the mechanisms for the selection or nomination of their candidate, and it overrules consensus, the fact that the provision is in the Electoral Act does not automatically impute it. So let's put that aside.
Okay.
Now, in the case of your specific question, I want to ask, who is the most resourced Southwestern candidate? Indeed, at this juncture, who is the most resourced Southern candidate? Plus including, as Chief Debudaya would say, plus including the Vice President. The person that has nurtured the networking aspect over the years, the person that has the deep pocket, it may not be the most ideal candidate for the most ideal character for most of us, but you know what? Your question as framed is actually slanted in favor of one person from the South. And we are talking to a man who indeed believes that we should be microzoning at this juncture to the southeast of Nigeria. Because fear is fear. Since 1960, when we attained our flag and anthem independence, a southeasterner has only ruled by accident or circumstance for only 6 months. 6 months, 6 calendar months. And we have this opportunity wanting to use the argument of equity and fairness for the North to subsume its majoritarianism, its natural instincts for majoritarianism, subsuming for rotation because of equity and fairness. And yet, if you are a Southwesterner, intellectual, well exposed, with a mind respecting the fact that for Nigeria to be sustainably prosperous as a single political entity, we need to find a mechanism such as Nigeria did in 1999.
Since we're talking about the APC here, since we're talking about the APC here, and let's zoom into the southeastern candidates who have so far declared interest. I mean, Odris Okalo pulled out midway. So all we have left is I think Ebonyi State governor at some point had thrown his hat into the ring. I think we have a former Senate leader. So, okay, yes.
The incumbent minister of Science and Technology,
yes,
who was once a governor.
Yes. But then let's look at those people, the caliber of the people that have come out from the Southeast. And of course, their voting power, the block power that they have in terms of swaying the votes, if the party were to say, well, let's zone this to these people. And I'm not in any way making a case against the Southeast, but I'm saying we have more people from the Southwest and then less people from the South and the Southeast. If we were to go by the numbers, if the APC were to go by the numbers, how encouraging are the people from the Southeast within the party who want to run for that office?
I'm basically telling you that at this juncture, there are about 6 characters from the Southeast who are including for me a comical character as the Minister of State, who was the first to actually collect the party's form.
Mr. Oba, I don't think you answered my question, but because we do not have too much time, let me quickly go back to Show Me. Quickly, he's making a case for the Southeast. Yesterday, we had, 2 days ago, we had a guest from the North who said that the people from the Southeast are not ripe, in his words exactly, that they're not ripe for this office. He also said that if we were to say, let's give power to the Southeast, who are the people to be given? I asked him why. Well, he also said that the confusion in the Southeast is also making them unprepared for the position of presidency. And he said, well, if we were to say, let's zone it to the Southeast, where are the people? Exactly. Well, I'm just asking him a question. Now that we're all asking and angling for the Southeast, how many, should we not have 1 million, just as we're having as many people from the Southwest, also vying for this office and showing that they're really interested in this office?
You have about 6. You have about 6 presently. How much can you have when you have half a dozen?
This question is for Show Me quickly before we go.
Well. The way I see it is, you first take the broad principle of equity and fairness. There should be no nationality in Nigeria that should be ruled out, or ruled in, from contesting for any post in this country. Because if we say we're a country made up of ethnic nationalities, we have to ensure that we have an a political arrangement that would encourage everybody to have a sense of belonging. That is the primary reason why in the Constitution we have the principle of federal character, so that all the states would have a sense of belonging. Whether the president likes it or not, he has to appoint a minister from each state of the federation. So when you're talking about the political leadership of the country, it is not the exclusive preserve of any ethnic group. The Southeasterners should also have a right to aspire, and nobody should deliberately work against them on account of being from Southeast. Now, I understand that democracy is a game of numbers. We have had agitations about people wanting to leave Nigeria, particularly in the Southeast. Yes, to some extent in the Southwest, the growth factor is there. The fact of the matter is you cannot say we don't want them to be president, while at the same time we don't want them to go. That's a contradiction.
But then all we see within the parties, we see all of the movements within the parties are not necessarily looking like it's going to favor the Southeast. And this is why I asked that question. We're not seeing that much attention towards the Southeast. We only hear agitations. We hear people saying you need to give your tickets to people in the Southeast. But the parties in themselves don't seem to be going in that direction. The APC and the PDP, in fact, the PDP has thrown its party ticket open. So really, are we just paying lip service to this issue? And again, the people from the Southeast, how eager are they to run for these offices? It's not enough to say we want power, but are they showing that they want to grab hold of this seat?
Yeah, for obvious reasons. If you look at the APC, for obvious reasons, Buhari said it when he came into office. I can't recall whether you remember when he was freshly elected in 2015. I think he went to the US where he said, he spoke about those who gave him 90% of the vote and those who gave him 5% of the vote, something along that line.
Yeah.
More or less hinting at the Southeast that is going to concentrate his attention on where he got more votes from than the Southeast. So, and that's precisely the situation. So since then, if not for the federal character principle, I doubt whether he would have appointed, Southeasterners into his government. Now, so one would expect that they are not well favorably disposed to within the APC, given the disposition of the president, except he has had a change of mind. But that is just it. It does not resolve any problem, because no matter what we do, we must ensure justice and fairness. If we say a section of the country is precluded from political power, there is going to be a problem at the end of the day.
Well, out of time, I want to say thank you to Bola Oba and, of course, Biodo Shomi. Thank you very much, both our political analysts. Thank you for being part of this conversation. I think that the conversation about the Southeast presidential ticket needs to be continuous. But thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all for staying with us. We'll take a short break now. And when we return, Godswill Akpabio, the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, says that Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act, as amended, does not exist. Well, this is up for discussion right after this break.
It's scary, isn't it? Putting yourself out there, ignoring the voices telling you you can't. Will you step aside, or will you go for it? After all, what's the worst that could happen? So, keep trying. Don't stop. Believe in yourself and go for it. Aladana, available in many variants to nourish you every step of the way.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on Plus TV Africa as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Nigeria, by extension, Africa, is faced with a lot of challenges. The growing youth population with little engagement, that is a ticking time bomb. We are a blessed people with diverse culture and highly cerebral minds who have a lot to say. And yes, we are talking. It is important we drive the right conversation that informs, inspires, influences thoughts and action. If we say there's beauty in our diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture. We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation as we are the hope for the future. Yesterday's conversations shape today. What are you saying to shape your tomorrow? We know you have a lot to say, and we are here to hear you.
In raising our kids, parents should stop playing God.
The internet is actually using the people.
But when you are looking for money to help other people, then it becomes easy.
Don't rush into marriage. I always say this. You rush in, you rush out.
Family is the bedrock of every society and the essence of life.
On Today with John and Helen, we dig deep into family values in every sense of the word.
Join us every Saturday at 9:15 a.m. on Plus TV Africa, DSTV channel 408.
With you, we play a part in strengthening the values passed from generation to generation.
The Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Obot Akpabio, has declared that the Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act, as amended, does not exist. The section of the Electoral Act mandates appointees of the government who are seeking electoral offices to resign before going into the primaries. But an Abia State Division of the Federal High Court sitting in Umuahia had declared the section unconstitutional, invalid, illegal, null and void, and ineffective. Now, the court further ordered the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, to delete the section without further delay. And Akpabio, who joined the presidential race recently, stated that he was not bothered about the appeal, insisting that he and other appointees of the president who are running for public offices are covered by the provisions of the Constitution, which surpasses every other law. Well, joining us to discuss this is Deji Awobiyide. He and Ladikbo Johnson both are legal practitioners. Deji, I'm sorry if I murdered your name. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Johnson, it's interesting. A lot of people have made their own deductions from what they think that part of the Electoral Act as amended says about public office holders. Many of us have questioned, how binding it is and if it really does hold water, especially when we have seen so many ministers who have declared their intentions to run for public offices and yet are still holding on to their offices. So take us through what this section says and if it does in any way hold water.
Well, good evening. I think that where we usually are at with some of the laws that are promulgated by the National Assembly. As you said in your introduction, people like Akpabio have said that it runs counter to what the term or what they view as what the Constitution says about public servants or so leaving office before election. And you'll recall that the minister made a in his statement, tried to say that there was a difference between primary elections and an election. But basically, it would seem that everything is still there until it is tested again in court. The Federal High Court, as you said, had stated that the provision runs counter to provisions of the Constitution. But basically, one has to look at it and wonder why we have that in our laws. Why would they want them to appointees to leave office before contested, whilst those who are elected, maybe let's say like the vice president, who is also trying to seek office, are not affected by it at all. So unfortunately, it's become like a gray area, and maybe we'll have more lights being shed on it either way.
Okay, Deji.
What's it?
Let me bring Deji in. The contention, as Mr. Johnson has said, it's a gray area, and he has made an interesting point. Maybe it needs to be tested in court, but then if a court has already said that this is null and void, it should be struck off, even though it's still not struck off, and the fact that the National Assembly had brought this even into our laws. Nigeria always has these many laws, but when it comes to us actually enforcing those laws, sometimes it just looks like we enjoy writing down these laws and then also enjoy not adhering to them. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Do you also think that maybe it needs to be tested in court? Do you think that maybe somebody also has to, raise a suit against these public office holders to be sure that that particular clause or part of the Constitution or the Electoral Act maybe stays there or being struck off?
Well, thank you very much. Let me just start, first and foremost by taking you through the jurisprudence of why that provision was enacted by the National Assembly. Don't forget that by virtue of the Constitution, Section 4 precisely, empowers the National Assembly to make laws for the good governance of the nation in its entirety. Mm-hmm. Now, pursuant to that power that they have, the National Assembly thought it fit to enact this Electoral Act and to insert this particular provision. Now, the backdrop is that previously, you've had cases where the right of ministers or political appointees to contest election, have been challenged in court. You have those cases of Oni and Fayemi, Adamu and Takori, PPA and PDP, where the issue was raised whether or not a minister is a public servant. Mm. Now, that question was always a recurring theme for, the past several elections we've had. There's always been an issue that has arisen. When a minister contests an election, the issue is usually raised. And the courts are settled that particular issue. In those cases, that a minister is a political appointee and not a public servant. Mm. But don't forget that the Constitution already provides that public servants must resign their appointments at least 30 days before the election. Now, that's what you will find in Section 66 1F, 107 1F, 137 1G, 182 1G. That's what you will find in the Constitution, okay, that you need to resign 30 days before the election. However, because these political appointees have always gotten away with it, okay, so they will remain as ministers, they will go and contest 30 days before, then if they emerge victorious, then they will get sworn in. If not, they remain in their political offices. So the National Assembly now decided, don't forget that you have the House of Reps and the Senate. Mm-hmm. They both decided, all those heads, like them or hate them, they had, the bill went through both houses, both the House of Reps and the Senate. And they came to the conclusion that to plug that gap, the lacuna in the Constitution, that usually allowed political appointees to get away with it, to insert this provision of Section 84.12, which says political appointees should not participate in congresses or in elections without resigning their offices. Mm. Right? So if you understand now that what the National Assembly did was to block that particular loophole that was used by these same politicians previously under the Constitution. Don't forget also that the National Assembly has the power to legitimately make laws for the nation. So pursuant to Section 4, they made that particular law. And that law, in my opinion, is valid, is subsisting, even though the court has said it should be struck out, which is on appeal. Mm-hmm. Okay? And in fact, I was going to the politics of that as well, because the politics of it is also that they filed an action against that particular law did not join the National Assembly to raise the case. That court now ordered, if you look at the very, any practicing lawyer knows that that's a very funny relief. The court now ordered the Attorney General to delete that section. Elementary political 101. Even year one students know that the power to delete provisions or to alter or to amend is vested in the National Assembly.
Exactly.
So when the court now says, I hereby order the Attorney General to delete, and after the judgment was delivered, the Attorney General said he was going to comply with it. I'm lost for words, because to get government to enforce that, to comply with judgments in this country is a very Herculean task. Whether it's monetary judgment or any judgment, to get them to comply is a very Herculean task. So when you now have the Attorney General's office saying they will comply with the judgment, it tells you that something has gone under. I don't want to know what it is, but it tells me clearly that that judgment is a contrived judgment. And rightly so, there's an appeal that has been lodged with the National Assembly against that particular judgment. It will not stand, because the case law is settled that a minister or a political appointee is not a public servant. So when you now say that provision should be struck out, well, that you have to go back to the Constitution, which says public servant. It now also goes further in 318 to list out the categories of persons that are affected by that provision. It is clear in black and white.
Okay.
And every lawyer who is worth his salt knows that the provisions of the Constitution are interpreted liberally. The way it is there, and literal rule will apply to interpret it. It is there in black and white. Let's apply it like that.
Okay.
So I don't agree with any with Akpabio or whoever that says that provision is illegal. It is not.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Johnson. I want us to look at the reason why this particular part of that Electoral Act was inserted. Many have complained about certain ministers using the apparatuses or public office funds and cars, as part of their campaign, which is also, according to them, against, the rules. You cannot be using a government property as part of your campaigning. And these are the reasons why many people have questioned why that court judgment is saying that this particular part of the Electoral Act be deleted. So if in let's say a minister trying to run for office and trying to campaign at the same time, how do you separate the office and the man at that point when they're campaigning while they're in office? How do you separate the two? Because this is where the confusion is.
Well, it's difficult or almost impossible to separate the two. If you're a minister or of the Federal Republic, and you have certain trappings of office, and you're contesting an election, you cannot put those things aside and then continue to contest. It will. There's no way you can separate it. So they'll do that. They'll have the advantage. Yes, that's why people have complained about it. But as I said earlier, we look at the advantages of, say, a sitting president as well, who's moving up and down, or a governor. They won't leave their offices.
Well, could that also be that these people were elected, so they have to serve their tenure? But then,
yes, I know
but then nothing stops them from campaigning while they're still sitting there.
Exactly, they're elected. That's the difference. But I am saying that yes, they're elected. If they campaign up and down the country, if it's they spend time campaigning, maybe not doing the work they should be doing, spending time campaigning. It's the same case for the ministers as well. Albeit that, okay, yes, they were appointed and what have you. So it's, yes, you're right. You cannot separate the person from his position when he's running up and down. But at the same time, one wonders why. I know the reasons why they say it, but one really wonders why, if it doesn't affect those who are elected, governors, deputy governors, and what have you, trying to contest using, or in case of the president or vice president, using the presidential jet to go up and down, then
As much as he's a candidate, he's still the president of the country, so he does have rights to use the presidential.
Exactly.
But in the case of a minister,
hang on. You see, he's the president of the country. He has a right. He has to move with security, with everything. That person is a minister at that point in time. He's doing his work as a minister and exercising his rights to go to the people and say, please elect me for this and that position as well. So what I'm saying is, okay, where lies the difference? We know the difference from what we've said, but really, going back, where lies the difference? Why should it be that they should resign? Isn't it something we brought in from the military era? They thought that, okay, step down 3 months to go, step down 6 months to go if you want to contest, step down and then come and contest. That's just what I am questioning. You understand? We know the position, but why the difference between the two? I know my brother is itching to jump in, but why the difference between the two?
Deji.
Yes. Well, I beg to disagree with Mr. Johnson. I mean, for very obvious reasons. Firstly, is that the governor and the deputy, the president and his vice, have the people's mandate to remain in office. They have our mandate to spend their money the best way that they can. And so when they go around with their entourage, I mean, we also need them alive to perform their duties. That's why they go around with the security entourage that they have. Now, that's quite different from a political office holder, an appointee of the president, or the governor, who has been appointed at his pleasure, who tomorrow the governor can say, I'm firing him. And same for the president. He can also decide to say, well, I'm relieving you of your post. So why should that person remain in office as minister or as commissioner, who's assigned to do a very sensitive, very specific job for the taxpayers and for the people, would remain there, leave that job? For instance, you're minister for works and housing. There are a lot of contracts that need to be executed. There are a lot of things that need your approval. But you are there on the one hand, now pursue your own personal and selfish agenda. It's a personal agenda. It's not the government's agenda. If you are campaigning to become governor or to become president, you're pursuing your own personal agenda. So let me give you the instance of the Minister of Labour, Dr. Chris Ibigi. ASU is on strike. NASU is on strike. But yet this minister, as on his priority list, becoming Nigeria's president, is purchased or he wants to purchase the firm. I don't know if he has paid the 100 million. But he's yet to. That's his priority now. His priority is not how to resolve the labor crisis under his ministry. His priority now is how to get the APC delegates to approve him and to select or elect him as the APC's flag bearer. Now, how do you balance those priorities on a scale? The people who suffer for it are the students and the lecturers and the family members who are of those students who want their children to be back in school. So that's why I say you cannot put them on the same scale by saying, well, you should enjoy the same benefit as the governor will enjoy or the president will enjoy. No, he is an appointee of the president. If he so desires that he doesn't want his job anymore and he wants a bigger job, a better job, he should resign his current job and go and pursue his ambition. But to pursue that ambition on the one hand and keep the people, keep the ministry. Under the ministry, you have civil servants, you have the permanent secretary, you have other directors who are there. You will leave them hanging, pending you resolve your own personal agenda. I mean, that's not right. And that's why I believe that the House of Reps and the Senate jointly agreed that Section 8412 should remain. If you observe, when the president was signing the bill into law, when he was assenting to the bill, he didn't mention his reservation about that particular provision. He went back to the Senate president. The Senate voted on it again, that thing should remain. For obvious reasons. They are all politicians. They know why they want that thing to remain. Because they know that what they will do is to put the taxpayers' interest to the back burner and put their own personal agenda in front. And you can see it's playing out. Every day somebody's buying $1 million phone. I mean, we see there's an inflation going on, there is economic crisis going on, but people are doling out $1 million per day. I mean, there's a problem. So I don't agree, Mr. Johnson, that you say they should enjoy the same privileges. No. The governor has our mandate. But those ministers and those commissioners don't have our mandate.
All right, because we're almost out of time, Mr. Johnson, I'll take your last word on this. Again, do we see, if this flies under the radar for now, And then for some reason, the minister, this becomes a flag bearer of any political party. Do we see lawsuits awaiting at the border quickly, because we're out of time?
Definitely, you'll see lawsuits everywhere. That's the normal thing. That's Nigeria. It will keep going on that way until it probably gets to the Supreme Court, where we'll have a final decision. Okay.
Mr. Johnson, are you still there? Well, apologies. I think we lost our guest, but I want to say thank you. Ladipo Johnson is a legal practitioner. Of course, Deji also is a legal practitioner. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of the conversation. I think we lost you at some point. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, thank you all for staying with us. To round up today's show, we take a look at the highlights of this week's conversations on Plus Politics. Don't forget, we'll be back on Monday at 7 p.m. GMT +1. I'm Mary Anacon. Have a great weekend.
You see, the greatest robbery of this election, Marianne, is the fact that it has been, because of the misrule of President Muhammadu Buhari, it has become an ethnic issue rather than an economic issue, rather than an issue of saving our education sector, rather than the insecurity in the Northeast and in all parts of the North. Now everybody is more concerned about where the president comes from than what the president can do, because everybody has seen the marginalization, the epicentrism that has been at play under the APC.
There is a northern president that will be completing 8 years in 2023. And let me restate that the presidency is not of the party. The presidency is the president of the country. So whether it is APC or whether it is PDP or whether it is any other party, he is the president of Nigeria, not the president of the party. And for us, and I speak on behalf of Afeni Ferret, Ohaneze Ndigbo, Sandel, and the Middle Belt Forum, under the auspices of Southern and Middle Belt leaders. And I'm restating the position of that forum, that any political party in Nigeria, any of the major political parties, there are political parties that we know that are motion parties, any of the major political parties, particularly APC and PDP, that choose the other candidate will not have our support. And it's a statement of fact.
Journalism in Nigeria is an all-commerce affair. Why is it an all-commerce affair? It's only in journalism where you see somebody who read an engineering course or maybe a medical course, practicing as either a broadcaster or a reporter, doing stories. Somebody who probably read psychology in school, So there is the lack of, what should I say, standardization, So all of these things, pose a very serious challenge, in terms of staying on stories and following up on stories.
The Southeast governors, led by the governor of Ebonyi State, has to really sit down again to redefine what they established as the Eastern Security Network. The Ebubago Security Network. Yes. The Ebubago Security Network was meant to be a regional security outfit like Amotekun. But if we watch the way the different other 3 governors or 4 governors of the Southeast have been acting or behaving, it does appear that Ebubago has only been operating in Ebonyi. And that I won't talk about it, because what is even doing in Ebonyi, it is not going after their non-government, it's only going after political opponents.
Okay, agreed, yes. PDP and APC, the 2 major parties, they have a zoning formula which they have been applying since the democratic dispensation came into play. But then, what we see playing out today is like it's a function of the entire system. All of a sudden, everybody is saying, oh, we don't believe in zoning. We don't want to follow zoning anymore. So something is, definitely wrong in the structure of these 2 political parties. And this is where the Igbo leaders need to go to first and resolve issues. Why is it that they're now saying they don't want to do zoning? what is the problem. So you can't tell me that, we can blame Mr. President for everything, but we can't be blaming Mr. President when the political parties themselves are not doing the right thing.
I don't know about pushing it to the southeast, because obviously those in the south, in the southwest, under the platform of the APC do not have any obligation to the PDP. So I think it's only a natural thing for them to want to, insist that the president, if a president can emerge from the southwest, should emerge from the southwest. But I think what is now happening is that there are even insinuations that even DC that has zoned the presidency to the southwest is beginning to think twice about it. Perhaps they feel that there's a weakness in the south and that the south has not been able to come up with. They require consensus needed to put pressure on the north to give up on the issue of the presidency. But they will be making a terrible mistake if they think that after 8 years under the president, that the North can remain in power for another 8 years. That will be chaos, and that's why people are warning.